Hello and welcome again to Brudenell Social Distancing TV. This is part two of a special doubleheader with John Keenan, the legendary Leeds promoter. In part one, we talked to John about his beginnings in the 1970s and promoting a punk club such as the F Club and the Futurama festivals, in which he brought together really the cream of post-punk and goth and all the wonderful youth culture movements that were springing up in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, and brought them all together in a string of legendary festivals. We kind of left off there at Futuramas. Today we're going to kind of rewind a tiny little bit to Futurama 2 and the TV footage thereof, and then we're going to look at what John did in the 80s after really the F Club, promoting at a string of venues, and then really moving on to really another probably the thing that is probably best known for apart from Futurama's really, but this fella's promoter of the Duchess of York, when he put on everyone from Nirvana to Blur to the Manic Street Preachers to Coldplay to famously Oasis to no people whatsoever apart from the bar staff. We will get all these stories. Good evening again, John Keenan.
Hello again, Dave. Back in the same old place.
We haven't moved ever since. We've been sat in exactly the same place for 2 weeks. There's even the tea hasn't changed. We're gonna pick that up, John, from last time. We talked about the Futurama festivals, but we didn't really talk about what became of. There was a film that you made of the second Futurama, or a collection of footage of the bands that played that day, which was, as I remember it. I mean, I was quite young, but I remember sort of late night on possibly BBC Two. Some of it was shown on on national TV, and then the footage completely disappeared for years. But it's sort of turned up again. What's the story of that?
Well, basically, I wanted to film the whole event for archives. I wanted to film the 1979 event, but I couldn't get hold of anybody, and I didn't have the money. I've never had the money really, but I managed to get it all together. But the second one, the tickets were selling really well, so I thought I'm going to be in profit here, and I'll put it into a film. I got the crew together. There were like 4 cameras, 16mm. Some people I'd worked with at YTV, and we got a movie together. But the one aspect of it was a 4-camera shoot, but one of the cameras, which was fixed on the stage, was slightly out of focus, so we couldn't use it. So there were only 3 angles to edit from. The company I used, Focus Films, were a bit dodgy, and they were like struggling a bit. And the film wasn't motivating, and the editor, Pete Taylor, sort of rang me up and said, I've managed to get hold of the footage, we can edit this. So every night, more or less for a few weeks, I cycled over from Moortown to Headingley to edit these pieces together with Peter Taylor. The director was Stuart Orme, who's directed a lot of great stuff since, but he was on the editing process. He was just there on the day, basically. But we edited it, and we got what I thought was a really good product. And I sold it to the BBC, to Michael Appleton, who was the producer of Olga Whistletree. And I went down to the BBC, and I was supposed to get 10 grand a show, which would have made me a profit. But I went down there and I found that Focus Film had put a claim in for half of it, even though I'd paid them like 17 grand. They put in claim for half of it. And when I got there, I only got 5 grand a show, which covered, because there were a few extra costs. In those days, there was no digital recording. It was all 60mm film. It had to be edited. The sound had to be sent in. There were a lot of costs involved. And a lot of the music for it, I recorded at Redan recording studios in London and mixed them all down. Took a day to mix down U2. And then had a meeting with U2 in at the Hallam Hotel in Sheffield, and Bono says, "Oh, I look a bit fat on that," and the head said, "You're playing it too fast." I said, "Couldn't you have decided that when we were mixing down the track? The track was I Will Follow." But anyway,
Yeah.
so they put a veto on it. There were two others put a veto. Soft Cell put a veto on it, film them, because by the time the film was done, they had a number one with
Tainted Love, yeah.
Love, and
Yeah.
there was a big deal then. And even though the festival actually gave them a big profile because their pictures were in all the European magazines and everything from the Futurama, because all the European journalists came over, John Peel from England, but from Holland and Belgium and France and Germany, they all came over to the festival because they knew it was like cutting edge. In fact, Europe was more into English alternatives than the Brits were really.
Yeah.
But the film itself. There was another one sitting around there, Psychedelic Furs with India, which is really good. But there was one part where the mic sort of veered away from Richard Buckler, and he had to go with, and he thought he looked daft with that, so he put a veto on it. So, but I couldn't show it. So but the thing is, I was going to bring it out as a DVD and all that. But the problem is, I spent all the money on this, didn't make any money on it. I thought, yeah, it'll do for my retirement. I'll bring it on DVD and all that. But it's available anywhere on YouTube. So what's the point? What's the point in spending money on glossing it up and putting it out? It's not worth it. It's out there anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
That's Blur who were on.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember quite a bit about that second one. One thing we didn't touch on last time, and I've told this story to people so many times, and I've started to wonder, actually, am I telling a story that I have kind of half imagined or misremembered? But as I remember it, U2 had their name behind them, written in what looked like a load of U-bends. And I've told the story so many times that it looks like they've just been to B&Q, got a load of plumbing materials and written the name in guttering.
Yeah, they set up, it was like plumber's piping, I think, or something like that. That might have been Paul McGuinness's idea. I traveled down with McGuinness to pick up the tapes in London, and we stopped off at Richard Branson's place. And I walked into the manor, and there were like two Irish wolfhounds by the fire and all that. And we walked, to speak, because it was the Virgin Manor mobile that recorded the sound.
Yeah.
So we came back, and around Cambridge, he only had a little Fiat, Paul McGuinness at the time. He'd managed Horselips, the Irish band before that.
Yeah.
And his car Fiat broke down, and we had to wait for the AA man to fit a little bit. And I think he's had quite a few cars since then.
I suspected probably. I'm glad that's a true story, because it's one of those things you start to think. I've told this story so many times, and I think, am I imagining it? Because I've never seen any photos of it. It's purely at the back of my, very young schoolboy brain, really.
It is there, but all these, BBC have a general clearance on MCPS and copyright and all that. But it's a funny thing. But I did get everybody to sign a thing, saying it would be okay to film it and all that.
Yeah.
So, I could probably still bring it out, but you kind of think, what's the point?
Bono might not be as touchy about weight these days. I mean, he's all right for himself.
He probably looks worse now than he did then. I couldn't see any difference. It's like, but it's like, I suppose it's the vanity of the rock star, isn't it?
I remember him falling over a lot. He was kind of really exuberant, and he kind of got carried away, and he would just literally tumble over. I mean, they were brilliant, I have to say. I mean, they were one of the highlights of that festival, the U2 as well.
I put them on twice down at Brannigan's, the F Club fan club at Brannigan's, and about 70 people each time,
Yeah.
And the punks didn't like him because they, they, they were different. They stood out at the time. They weren't doing what anybody else was doing,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, I remember saying to Paul McGuinness, "Can't you get him to throw in a couple of covers so people can see where they're coming from?"
Yeah.
You know, and they brought out 11 o'clock TikTok, which I
Yeah.
think is still one of their best. Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
their first. And you know, that was great. And then I Will Follow, and then the rest is history.
Yeah.
Very good, you know. But I think they've kind of, it's all, you know, once people get them, the novelty wears off, and then people start slagging them off. You know, you know, one of the top bands to come out from British Isles, definitely.
It is incredible to think that, you know, that within, let's see, 7 years of playing Futurama and probably about 8 years of playing the F Club, they were playing at Ellen Road, you know, and
Yeah.
playing one of the biggest gigs ever seen in Yorkshire, you know.
I went down to the Ellen Road gig with some flyers, and Stuart, I forget his name now. He'd been a social sec at Leeds Uni, and he'd done some jobs for me in the past. And he
Andy
was
Kershaw.
on
Andy Kershaw?
Wraith. Yeah, he's like in a couple of the big promotion company now.
Right.
And came to the door before we were playing the Mission, all bands that I'd put on several times. And I
Yeah.
went to the back and you know, to get in. And I said, "All right, Stuart, you know, come in." And he says, "Are you on the guest list?" I said, "I might be." I said, I messaged Paul McGuinness, you know, it should be. "Oh, Paul isn't here, but his assistant is." I said, well, you know me, Stuart, just, you know, I know them, you know, I put them on. Let us in. And
Yeah.
he wouldn't let me in.
You're
So
kidding.
yeah, he went to this girl and said, "Oh, we don't know." Anyway, Paul McGuinness got wind of it, and the next time they played Leeds, he sent me management passes and all that, you know, so I could get in. But it was a bit disturbing. But that's sometimes you meet these kind of people in the business. Jobsworth, it's
Yeah.
like I knew him, and he's like a stony-faced Scotsman, but you know, these people are all over the place, aren't they?
Yeah. And you often find that it's the sort of two tiers down that are like that. The people at the top are actually usually all right and they would let you in, you know. Yeah. After Futurama, you seem to really, you were promoting all over the place. I remember you put a lot on in a place called the Beer Keller, which isn't there anymore. I'm not sure what it is now, but it was behind the Marion Centre, sort of down, like a sort of, like a drinking hall, wasn't it? Like a Bavarian drinking hall.
Yeah, it was a good venue, except there's a lot of steps. And I actually, it was up for sale a few years back, and I looked at it, and it's still a really good hall. But it would have cost, you know, they put all these rules about disabled access, and it would have cost a lot of money to put a disabled lift in, you know, for the amount of people who needed to cover it. But now, I think they sold it to a West Indian gospel church.
Right.
I don't know what it still is, but you know, the last time I saw it a few years back, it was a gospel church, but it's still there. It's still, you know, next to the bowling alley, you know, at the back of the Marion Centre.
I remember seeing a band there called the Passions, and
Yeah.
I remember you also put them on at the F Club, and I hope I've got this right, but I think that's the gig where the dry ice machine wouldn't stop churning out dry ice, and in the end it filled the room with so much dry ice that it was like a Victorian fog, and everyone had to be herded outside and stand out in the street while they cleared the building of fog.
But yeah, probably. The vehicle I put on the fall, Stevie Marriott, Pretty Things, The Sweet, you know, Dr. Feelgood, Nico, John Cooper Clarke, I put loads on. And then the goth scene,
Yeah.
it was about 1983, was like wasn't around with places like the Bat Club in London. And so I started a club there between there and Tiffany's called the Dungeon Club. and that was like the start of like the goth scene a bit, in Leeds. We used to call it then, never called it goth, called it dark wave.
And positive punk it was called for a while. I remember the Enemy called it positive punk. Bands like Brigandage and Specimen, and basically anyone that wore a lot of black.
And Taylor, who were about stuff like that. The Cults, when they changed the name from Death Beats.
And Tiffany's, you mentioned, there was some fantastic stuff at Tiffany's. U2 played again on the October tour, and the Stranglers, and mentioned Nick Cave and the Birthday Party and Bower House, and there was a lot of really great gigs in Tiffany's.
I remember at the Stranglers, it sold out, and the doorman called me over to look at it again, and there was a kid who meticulously copied the Stranglers ticket, to get, and he said, "Look," I said, "It's really good. He hadn't done it," and I felt tempted to let him in, and the bouncer said, "Well, once you let one of them in, he'll be doing it all the time." I said, "All right, fair enough." And the thing is, I probably still have it somewhere, but it was like, he must have spent all day doing it. I feel really sorry for him. Looking back, I wish I'd have let him in.
Yeah, it's probably a great artist now. It could have been Damien Hirst or anybody.
He used to do banknotes. If you remember, he used to copy banknotes and take them to the bank, and those banknotes were going for like thousands now.
Wow.
He became famous and people doing that.
Another venue that you did stuff then, which is now, I think it's a supermarket now, but the Ford Green over at Hills, it was it was out of town, but a real pub. I remember a legendary fall gig there in about '83 in the middle of summer with a really hot day, a fantastic fall gig.
Yeah, I put them on when they had Kay, the ex-nurse who was managing them. She kept the only one who could keep Mark in control.
Yeah.
She's quite a strong woman. And,
Kay Carroll, bless her. She's died last week, actually, Kay.
Yeah, that's a shame. I liked her.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Really, one of the first female managers, really, certainly in that post-punk period, and like you say, was very, very strong and would take on, the Richard Bransons and Tony Wilsons and give them real what for, fearsome, but really lovely woman as well.
She is what Mark needed. He needed something like that. But then he got, women where he was in control, and I suppose he had a good career after that.
You put the Fall on for years, didn't you? I mean, you put the Fall on through numerous lineups and changes, and
I put them on everywhere. From Irish Central, Duchess, any. I can't remember whether I put them on the story or I might have done. Anyway, they came to me. I got on with Mark. All the stories about him. He was a bit strange with people, but he was never bad with me. He's fine with me.
Yeah. I think it seems to be one of those people that if you approach, like a bit like an Alsatian, if you approach it the wrong way, it'll bite your hand off. If you approach it without any fear and perhaps give it a little pat, it'll be lovely. It was always fine with me, Mark, to be fair.
I'm not afraid of any rock star. all of it is a front. A lot of it is a front. It's their publicists make it up about them,
Well, seeing a lot of your gigs down the years, I would be more frightened of the audiences than the bands.
Yes, it can be very frightening. Yeah.
There were a couple that were very tasty. I mean, there was the one with that when the Lemon Kittens supported Killing Joke and got pelted with bottles and God knows what else. But the worst one, or the biggest sort of virtually a riot, was the James gig at the Astoria of all bands. James, meek, vegetarian, Buddhist, meditating vibes.
Yeah, the football following. I remember I got up there and I said, and I had some bikers doing security with me, and I got on stage. I said, I think there's a tape out there. Somebody saying something along the lines of, "If you don't stop, we're going to get a Black Mariah up to the door, and you'll all be going, And it was the Gibson boys. I know all of them who were causing the trouble. They've been coming to gigs for years. They still come to gigs.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them were the Irish Gibson boys and football Leeds United supporters as well. You know,
Yeah.
and it was very surreal to see James playing that sort of soft, kind of gentle music, and them all going wild to it. You know.
I remember the bass, the drummer rather, Gavin, the original drummer, Gavin Whalen, I think that's how you pronounce it, sort of standing up with the bass drum, basically using the bass drum to threaten anyone off. You know, I've never seen anything like it. And in the meantime, everything was just hitting the stage.
They supported him as well. Actually, he went to front 1,000 violins. But yeah, that was a very memorable gig for me. You know, there was one point, it was like me and Louis, one of the bikers, back to back, and then all in a circle around us. You know,
Absolutely.
you know, when these things happen, you've just got to deal with them. You know, and I think one of my talents is that I don't panic. You know, if you've got a situation, if you get angry too and shout and scream, it escalates everything. It all
Yeah.
goes up and you
Yeah.
know what you got to do is like take it down, separate the troublemakers, take the whole thing down. And
Yeah.
you know, I used to do that for a long time, but some you can't escape from. You know.
I suppose it quietened down gigs quietened down generally. I think after the sort of late 70s and 80s, a lot of the more violent gigs seem to, you know, take a back seat really. And I don't know why that was. Maybe it's a generational thing, but the gigs seem to get milder from sort of through the 90s really.
I know what it was. It was the rave scene. All like it used to be the Leeds service crew, late 80s and all that. They used to be smashing up pubs and clubs, you know. And then all of a sudden they got into ecstasy, MDMA, and then they were turning up at the door like hippies. Hi, man, doing the like double handshakes and all that. And I thought, thank God for drugs. I don't take it, but it was like, you know, it was
They
like
all loved each other.
all of them. Yeah.
That would probably explain it. It was certainly around. It was that period, the sort of late 80s, that they all chilled out. Yeah, very
When I
strange.
promoted before it was the Duchess, Mick Lombard and the landlord. It was Robin Hood, and for a brief time he changed the name to the Marquis in about 1986. And I said, oh, don't do that. You know, there's a Marquis in London. They'll be suing you and all that. And sure enough, he did. But I ran a night there for a couple of months called, I call it the IF Club. The IF Club at the Marquis or
Yeah,
at the time, and put Nico on and East House, a few people like that. But anyway, I stopped it because Mick used to let the service crew and all, he was, you know, in the side room, and they'd be doing Leeds chats and all that. I said to Mick, I can't do it. You're letting football fans in free, you know, and I'm doing this gig and disturbing, you know, I can't do it anymore. And then 18 months later, Mick was like relinquished Tennessee. You know, I took over in March 1988.
right.
And I sort of knocked back a lot of those service crews thought we could get into nothing. But as I say, you know, it was always a bit hairy then, and then we all got into ecstasy, and then it was fine. So,
Had you,
yeah,
had you always wanted a venue where, you know, it felt like it was very identifiable with you? It kind of felt like almost like your house in a way. You know, you would go and you were putting bands on, you know, 7 nights a week.
yeah. I don't know. I look at what I did back then. You know, I was promoting about, even at the Duchess, I was promoting about 5 of the venues, like City
Yeah,
Variety, the Coliseum, which became the Town and Country, and now the
yeah.
O2, and the Irish Centre. And you know, I just had them all on the go. It's like juggling. But I loved it. The more that I had to do, the more I had in my mind, the more I had to shift things. Uh, it, the more enjoyable it was.
Mm.
You know, I didn't drink when I first started it, and I said to my doctor, I said, I can't sleep. You know, I'm working 16, 17 hours a day. I've got to put my head on the pillow and it's still buzzing. I can't sleep. And he said, I'll give you some sleep. I said, I don't want sleeping tablets. He said, do you drink? I said, no. He says, well, you know, I shouldn't be saying this, but have a couple of pints at the end of the night. It's a soporific, send you to sleep. And that was a downward slope for me. You know, so I had a couple of pints to be good. Then it was like three bottles of gross, you know. But I've calmed down a bit since.
One thing that struck me about the Duchess was there was a lot of a lot of the same people would go to the gigs. You know, there was like a regular core of people that went to virtually all the gigs, or certainly a real variety of them. But the other thing was the people that were there, sort of the staff, really, if you like. There was a crew of very strong characters. You know, like Deaf Jeff, the soundman, or Flat Nose John, who I'm not really sure what Flat Nose actually did, but he was just always there.
He was always there, and that's why I gave him jobs to do to get him away from me at the door, you know. And then gradually, I let him put on some shows with local bands, you know, in there. So that sort of developed to a point where he started making people believe that he was the promoter. You know, he started, I promote the Duchess, you know, I do all that.
Yeah.
It reached a head when Island Records were trying to get in touch with me, and they rang the pub, and they said, "Oh, there's a card here, I'll give you his number." And they gave Flatnose his number, and I said to the barman when I came down, he said, "Oh, Island Room, did you get that call?" I said, "No." He says, "Oh, I gave him your number," and he got a card made that said, "I was JFK Promotions, or JMK Management," with a drawing pin in the middle of the M. So it was like, you know, he was passing off as me, if you like. So, you know, I pulled him up and I said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Oh, it's JMK, not JFK." I says, "I know." And I said, "Until you do something about that, you're not putting any more gigs on him." And he changed it to Joy Promotions or something, you know.
Right.
And he'd been funded by the mother of the band. I won't say it, but he'd been funded by, and she was putting into him thinking that he was the promoter of the Duchess, you know, putting all the bands on.
Yeah.
He gave a few. I employed him to sort of help the bands in with the gear, and I heard him once saying, "Oh yeah, I'm John, I'm the promoter." And then he saw me, the promoter's assistant.
It was one of those people that, despite those sort of little strokes, he was hard to dislike, wasn't he, John? You know, it was kind of, I don't know. There was something about him that was likable.
Well, he could do, you know, I'd known him from the Ford Green, and
yeah,
he could do the jobs. He could do sound. He could do a bit of lights. So it's quite useful insofar as, like, if you're struggling to find somebody, you know, even merchandise, get Flatnose John to do it. You know, he was your archetype type of roadie. You know, like, you know, scuff leather jacket, faded jeans, and stunk of BO. You know, typical roadie.
And Jeff was, in a way, Jeff was the sort of typical sound man, similar, you know, leather jacket or cap sleeve T-shirt a lot of the time. And I mean, people would tell me that, you know, they'd talk to Jeff and he'd show them how to work the gear. You know, he'd give them basically a lesson in how to mix a band while he was mixing a band.
Yeah, he's from New Bigham by the Sea. He was a nice guy, but he got into drink a bit much towards the end. You know, it's like having a drink and then chasers. You know, when you see them doing drinks and chasers,
yeah,
you know, it leads to alcoholism. He had stomach problems, and he signed himself out of hospital and to take his dog for a walk, and dropped dead outside his local curry house. The guy ran out when he was gone.
Yeah.
It was a big shame. He was a character, definitely.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of the people were there all had degrees. You know, from Leeds Union, students all had degrees, and they're all working in bars. I suppose it's temporary.
you put on so much stuff there. I mean, did you see it as a launch pad? I mean, when you look at the bands that played there, it really is a real who's who of people that went on to be, well, legendary, really. I mean, the classic one, I suppose, for that, well, there's a few really, but something like the Nirvana gig when Kurt Cobain famously slept on the sofa upstairs.
Yeah. Well, I used to let a lot of the bands. There's lots of space upstairs. There were 2 floors upstairs. We used to let the bands stay there, and I had duvets up there, they could sleep under. And but the band refused to sleep in the same room as Tad. There was a big guy, me, because he snored. So he slept on the sofa in my office. That's what I remember about that gig. But at the Nirvana gig, Nirvana were in the middle. It was Tad were the headliners, Nirvana in the middle, and Cateran, a Scottish band, opened.
Oh yeah.
And I did the lights from Nirvana. I left the door probably with flat nose John and went to do the lights, and it wasn't that busy. 140 people in whatever. Doing the lights. And at the end of Nirvana's gig, Kurt took a swing at the mic with his guitar and broke this expensive Sennheiser drum mic. And Jeff, who we were just talking about, jumped up and grabbed him, pushed him against the wall, and said, "I won't use the expletive," but he said, "That's Mike." Mike. And the tour manager came rushing over, dragged him off Kurt. He said, "No, I'll replace it. I'll do all that." And to be fair to him, he replaced it the next day. And what the tour manager was doing as well, and he was buying second-hand guitars. There was a second-hand guitar shop just 2 doors down from us. And guitar there, and for the last number or so, Kurt would swap guitars and smash it up. They didn't have much money, but it made an impact. People noticed them. And didn't smash any guitars. It was just good. On the night, Tad were the better band, but somehow Nirvana found their sound. I was talking to Chris Novesky at the end, and I'm sure it was him who was saying that they were all into the Gang of Four. He was talking about Leeds and saying the Gang of Four.
Yeah.
And they were in Seattle. He said we were all into the Gang of Four. I think he played in the Gang of Four tribute, when he was a teenager for a while.
Yeah.
Well, he joined Nirvana, and so they were interested in playing Leeds because the Gang of Four.
Yeah. The Chili Peppers were the same. Flea especially, a massive Gang of Four fan. And they know all about the Leeds scene and the Fenton and all that stuff. It's weird to think that's, something that we sort of take for granted living in the city to an extent, but, can have such reverberations around the world, like that. Really.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, John.
We came to Leeds to live in Leeds because of the Futurama. He said to me, I can't live in Leeds because I saw Futurama. It looks like some great things are happening, so we came to live in Leeds.
Why not?
It probably wasn't California or somewhere. It was probably in some Michigan or somewhere. I don't know.
I used to go to gigs a lot by that time. In the early 90s, I'd started writing live reviews for Melody Maker, and so I was going down to the Duchess all the time. And it was one of those things that you never really quite knew what you'd expect, what you'd get. I remember walking in on bands that really obscure bands that I'd never heard of, like the Pop Pigs from Scarborough, or the Bridewell Taxis from Leeds. And thinking these are great. Who are these? Like they're just local boys.
There were some great bands from Leeds. The problem with Leeds always was, even Days of the F Club, I'd put a Liverpool band on, and there'd be like a couple of coaches coming from Liverpool, and they'd all be there front cheering, their band. So all the local kids thought, these are good, everybody's going for them. And they used to use a technique in the music hall days. They used to pay what they call the clack of people to clap if there was a new comedian. So the manager, the agent, in the music hall, they get about 20 people to come and cheer, and laugh at the jokes and all that. And so all the other people would think, oh, these must be really funny. And so Manchester bands used to bring coaches over. Liverpool bands used to bring coaches over. But the thing is, when Leeds bands went away, they didn't take anybody with them. So
Yeah.
they didn't take off. Another problem at the time was with Leeds bands is they used to pull each other down. If the band started taking off, all the other bands were slagging because they didn't want to see them getting up the ladder further than them. It was always
Yeah.
that kind of attitude, Oh, what do you think of Winston Parvel? Oh, the crap. We're much better than them. They don't do that. Winston Parvel evolved into Parvel and then into Kaiser Chiefs, But there was all that kind of thing going on.
Mm.
But I kept saying, look, if you all support each other, let them go, and then you can follow. They'll open the gates and you can follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was difficult to start the scene in Leeds, definitely.
But meanwhile, other bands would come in, and one of the gigs I remember quite vividly was Blur, and it was because must have been about, I think it was about 90 or 91. Was it 90? It must have been 99. But they were a baggy band. They weren't the band. Yeah, they weren't. This is right before Britpop, and Damon Albarn had like sort of a kind of like a birdsy kind of mop top and a medallion, and they had sort of psychedelic lights behind them and everything. I mean, I thought they were pretty good, but I wouldn't have in a million years dreamt that they would have so many reinventions and that they'd be, effectively, well, the Damon's certainly very active today.
When I booked them, they were a psychedelic band, and they had that single out, There's No Other Way, and and I just thought they were like a baggy psychedelic band. But
yeah,
a lot of bands start off like that, being part of the scene, and then they start off wider. They come up with something original, and all of a sudden, they're a big band. Radiohead, when I first put them on, they were supporting a progressive rock band called Here and Now. I've got the receipts somewhere, and when at first, the psychedelic band, and when you hear some of the songs like Paranoid, Android, they remind me of bands like Enid and things like that, but they have this bit of originality to them, and that is what I always look for. And when I used to get loads of tapes. You've probably seen the pictures of the tapes in the office. But, what I always look for is a distinct sound. That distinct sound, that the minute you hear it on the radio, just from the first two chords, you can tell it's them.
Yeah.
That is, and I think people like that feeling of knowing, I know a little bit, because you can't manufacture it.
No.
It's there. It's something they either have or they don't have.
Yeah. I saw that Radiohead gig. In fact, I think I reviewed that Radiohead gig for Melody Maker, and I didn't think they were that fantastic, to be brutally honest. But I thought they were all right, But Creep did stand out. That was way above all their other songs. It was very obvious that they had this one great song, and I guess on that first album that was the great song, and then they wrote lots of more great songs after that.
They only made it in Britain because Creep was a hit in America first. It was like the Police song made it because Roxanne was a hit in America, and then they came back, having had a big American hit. But the Police weren't doing that well when we started out. When I first put them on, the place of 70 people. And booked a bed and breakfast in Hayhills. I took them back, and it was a dark room with 4 beds and about 20 watts bulb in it. And two of them said, "We're not sleeping in this thing," said, "Oh, I'm tired of it." So we just crashed out on the bed. And we went to the rendezvous at the bottom of Chapeltown Road. And we were there till 4 or 5 in the morning because we didn't want to sleep at the hotel. Copeland and Henry Padovani's Corsican. And then it was only Andy Summers joined later, joined after that. It was only when Andy Summers joined that the class.
Yeah. Is the Oasis story true that they played to literally no people?
Well, there were about a dozen people in, I think about 8 pay. The Oasis story, there's 2. But the story that Noel tells with Bonehead. You know, they talk about the Duchess gig, and it was like, oh yeah, we told the promoter to put 50 quid on the door, you know, because we were worth it and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that, nobody came, and they're kind of justified. The reason nobody came is nobody had heard of them. They hadn't had anything out. They'd been signed in May. They played the King Tut's gig, and I think my gig was in September, and they'd only had Columbia out, and that had only had a couple of radio plays on someone like Steve Lamacq or whatever. And so they went, no, nobody knew. At the time, there was a band in Leeds called Oasis who did the clubs. They were like a soft cell type duo, you know, just keyboards and things. They called Oasis. You know, they were in all the gig guys playing the clubs. And I remember, you know, we went out to talk at the end, and Marcus Russell, the manager who previously managed the Bible, with Bill Hewardine and all that, he'd just taken over the management of them. And we were talking outside with Noel, and I said a few things. You know, I said like your kid, his mannerisms a bit too much like Ian Brown's. He's doing that monkey thing.
Yeah.
And they cured that by the next gig. They'd put the mic up a bit higher, so he had to sing up to the mic with his arms around at his back, so he wasn't doing the Ian Brown stuff. And you know. We talked about a few things. You know, I was saying like I just put Ian Hunter on from Motley Hooper at the Irish Centre, and I said it was great. All the tracks, you forget how many hits they had, and everybody's waving scarves. I said that was like pure guitar pop. I said you should listen to a lot more. You know that Motley Hooper thing. I said your Liam, he's got a snare in his voice. He's a bit like Joe Strummer, a bit like Ian Hunter, and whatever. And the next time they played, they did all the young dudes. You know, and I think what Noel's secret is that he did listen to people. He took stuff on board.
Yeah.
A lot of their sound from the Real People in the early days. I used to put the Real People in the Liverpool band.
Yeah, Liverpool band.
And Liverpool used to use their rehearsal room, and the Real People had got a deal. They had better gear than Oasis. We used to let them use their gear, which is more powerful, and you know, show them. Okay, so I think the Real People were quite responsible a lot for Oasis's sound. You know, kind of mentored them. I think they're quite wistful now. I think because of that.
Yeah, I bet, because I remember I did see the Real People at the Duchess, and they were a really good band. I think they were, but they were signed to a big label, weren't they? I think it was CBS or Sony, and they were probably that little bit too polished. And whereas Oasis had that raw edge, plus they had Liam. You know, they had this fantastic front man.
The lyrics were too clever, the music was too clever, but the sound was like that really powerful sound that Oasis appropriated. You know.
Yeah. When you see these bands, do you think, you know, or can you possibly think, you know, this band are going to be huge, whether it's Pulp or Coldplay or, you know, Oasis, or, you know, a lot of the bands that you put on when they were pretty much unknown, really.
Like a determination, you can see it in people. You can see, I saw it in Toya. You know, I just thought this is one. She's only tiny lady, and I just thought this is one person who wants it badly. You know, she wants to make it. So in Adam Ant, you know, he was like, you can tell he was focused. You know,
Yeah.
You can just tell they really want it. You know, and they really want to go for it. And you can kind of tell, which is why, like, this is how I made my money, and I invested in bands like that had a distinct sound that I thought would make it. And I was like paying them £100 or whatever, and then in those days I would get the second gig, which you know, like 50 people that does the second gig would sell it out. Then I'd get the Irish Centre gig or the Poly gig and whatever. But what happened was that Simon Moran came along, and I used to give two gigs with the Duchess, SGN Promotions. And, but not just him, people like him. And they were like saying, "Oh, can I put a gig?" So, you know, I used to let him stay at the Duchess, put for a while now. And then when Oasis broke it, I did the first 2 gigs. You know, the second gig for Oasis was totally sold out. And they were originally supporting Whiteout. By the time they got to us at the Duchess, it was obvious that Oasis were pulling the crowd. So Oasis headlined. And the next gig, that was about the April of '94, next gig in August, I had to co-promote it with Simon Moran because basically Noel's girlfriend was working with Simon Moran.
Right. Yeah.
He got them, and all the venues that he'd been posting his little gigs on up and down the country, he sort of put them all in.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to capitalize on Oasis that much because I just got a share, co-promotion, because he sold the whole tour up, and that's what he did. He you'd build a band, and then just when you'd lose on the first one, break even on the second one, just as you got to make the money.
Yeah.
Find that Simon Moran had booked the whole tour, and you don't get a look in. I used to come and hang around outside. I'd put these bands on, and somebody said Simon Moran's out there. You go, all right, son. Well, I was just passing. Just taking a look to see, given from Warrington or whatever, just to see how many people that a certain band would play. So you go as a promoter discovering these bands, and it was like you're fattening up livestock for somebody else to sell at the market.
I mean, I guess that's that towards the end of the Duchess as well. That the sort of later in the '90s, that was probably you had a growing kind of pile of problems really, and that'll have been one of them. The amount of other promoters that were muscling into stuff. Perhaps the changes in the music scene. It was put about after the real Britpop boom, and it was things were a little bit like which way is it going to go next? But then the main problem, as I remember it with the Duchess, was the lease or the lease on the venue was coming to an end. I think that's what happened. You talk us through it, John.
Well, it came the last few years. Fibbers Group had the lease on the Duchess. I think it got to a point where they were having some trouble with the brewery over the sale. There were a lot of little issues, and they went to sell it off. So they sold it off, the lease off, and it was bought by a property company. Everybody blames Hugo Boss. It wasn't Hugo Boss's fault. This property company bought it. They totally gutted the Duchess. Everything went into the cellar, so the cellar was just rubble and covered it over. And they put steel frame inside and put some new floors in. The kebab house next door one. And at first they put it on the market as 2 units, as 2 shops. But then Hugo Boss put in an offer about a year later after they'd done that for a full store. And so, they took it over. But, the headlines like from rock to rocks, but it wasn't Hugo Boss's fault. So everybody blames him.
I remember there was like a kind of last night or last rites with Chumbawamba playing. They did the last gig there.
Yeah. Well, I got up and did a few numbers. I think you did a review of me. Dressed up as Elvis, and you ain't nothing but a hound dog, and I can't help falling in love with you. And then I came back on and did Duchess by the Stranglers. And I think you wrote a review and said John Keenan did an excruciating
I never could spot talent, John. I was terrible at spotting talent, obviously.
I thought, well, most of my public won't know what excruciating means. So.
I don't think I probably did. Maybe I thought it meant fantastic. Maybe I just thought it meant fantastic. But you must have had so many people over the years that have come up to you and said, I used to go to the Duchess or the F Club or any of the numerous places you put put bands on. But you know, you must have touched a lot of people's lives, you know, and by the music that you've introduced to Leeds and to those people.
Yeah, actually, you know, a lot of the time in the early days, I actually did all my leafleting outside the big gigs at the uni, everywhere, handed it to people so that I know, you know, that they got them. Because you saw my flyers, my leaflets, they're all hand done. I used to do, the thing is, if I'd have spent time like doing glossy, really nice posters for each gig, we didn't have computers in those days, so all had to be cut and paste and whatever. So, you know, I had the punk ethic of, you know, just handwriting a lot of it. You know, if I couldn't find the letter set, and just write it in. And in some ways, it made the posters stand out. And see, you know, that one is like the early days. And I just, you know, I was running a pub doing several venues, and I just used to, I formed this calendar way of writing things, and I just used to write them in while I was in the office and waiting for another phone call from the agent. That's another thing that I used to get in those days. The phone was going constantly, you know, bands wanting to play all the time. Thankfully, now you don't get any of that. You know, it's like you just get emails and you can either ignore them or address them. You know, but yeah, you know, a lot of it, a lot has changed. I forget the thread of what was the question you asked me.
I can't remember. No, I was asking about people touching your life and you touching their lives, you know, and people basically saying thanks for putting it on, you know.
And in my own leaflets on, but I used to like that, and then sometimes I get one or two people to do it, and one of them came back to me and say, you know, I met my wife while I was doing those leaflets for you, and then one day James Brown, you know, the FHM and all that magazine, he came to me and he put a tenner in my pocket. I said, "What's that for?" He says, "Well, you know, when you paid me to leaflet the uni," he said, "Well, I didn't. I just put them in the bin. So here's your tenner back." So, you know, if some of those people don't mind gigs, you know, there would have been more. It's worth a lot more than a tenner to me, but I find that a lot of the time I have difficulty delegating, finding the right people. And that's why I do a lot of the work myself. Because if I do it myself, I know it's done. You know, if I leave it to other people, they don't do it. And that is always my problem. I think you look at the big entrepreneurs, you know, Richard Branson, Alan Sugar and all that, they don't do any of the work. They're like, the idea is the figurehead, but they pick the right people. And they get the right people. You know, like Richard Branson was actually his brother-in-law, Simon Draper, who was running Virgin Records. Richard Branson didn't have much to do with it. And it's the same, you know, they're like the figureheads. But I never got the knack of finding the right people. You know, I found people that I liked, but not necessarily the right people.
You were great to me. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to write the reviews I did without you letting me into those gigs. You know, you just waved me through every night, and I was able to go 4 nights a week, and every so often I'd discover a band and write about them and get it printed, and I was able to become a music journalist. I don't think I could have done it without you letting me into those gigs.
People like you are valuable, though. They're valuable to the venue. They're valuable to the bands. It's only, you know, the Futuramas are valuable to the bands because there's a load of press coverage from all of them, and your reviews and the gigs. Every week, people would get Sounds Enemy, Melody Maker, and they would read the reviews, and that would, like, if they'd not heard them, they would seek out the record that you were recommending or the band you were recommending. So you know. The press is very valuable. The only problem I had in the early days that every teenager was doing a fanzine, and you get these kids like coming with a mock-up that they made for school, like Jesus says, "Oh, do a fanzine." So they do these like fanzines. I write this fanzine, I write that fanzine. And it was like, you know, one spell, you know, you had about half a dozen people coming in. This is my fanzine.
It works that though. I used to always say this to other, you know, kids when they used to say, "How did you get into music journalism?" I used to say, "Do a fanzine," you know, because once you've got something, you can go up to gig promoters, or you can go to record companies and say, I do this so-and-so magazine. Can I come to your gig, or can I interview your band? You know, they do let you.
Well, James Brown did it when he was about 15. He had a fanzine called Attack on the Zag.
Yeah.
You know, just to make things up. I think he wrote one piece that I'd attacked Paul Morley for doing a bad review or something, which I hadn't, you know, but you know, that had decked Paul Morley for doing a bad review of this game.
I never made stuff up, but I certainly got stuff wrong. But one thing I did, which was still one of my favourite memories of the Dutch, is that you put on Mo Tucker from the Velvet Underground, and I took along my fanzine, and she was kind enough to give me an interview, you know, for the fanzine. And we went upstairs in the Duchess, and I'm chatting away to her, and she's like, "Oh, hang on, we've got to watch this." And I think it was Jules Holland's Later. It was one of those music programs, and it was on the telly in the Duchess upstairs, and Lou Reed was on. And I'm thinking, I'm sat in the Duchess with the drummer from the Velvet Underground watching the singer from the Velvet Underground on the telly. It was one of the weirdest moments of my life. I just thought, is this real? Am I dreaming this? You know, it was so bizarre. And then the next night you go and see, you know, Radiator or whoever playing at the Duchess, you know, you think, did that really happen?
She was a lovely lady, you know. I had something in common because I used to put Nico on a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talked to her about Nico and all that. And it was like she's quite unassuming. She would blend in the crowd, you know, and then got behind the drums and she was a powerhouse. I think she even did a bit of guitar on the night later on. But she was with a band called Half Japanese with Tab Fair.
That's right, yeah.
It was a very memorable night, you know, and you know, I was a big Velvet Underground fan, so you know, I was quite pleased to put her on because I'd put John Cale on, I'd put Nico on, and Mo Tucker, but I never got Sterling Morrison or Lou Reed.
The set. You have put on so much stuff, and after the Duchess, you went on. You know, you had another venue, the New Roscoe, for quite a long time, really. And then since then, you I suppose in a way you're partly back where you were in terms of promoting at different venues, but then equally you put a lot on at the Brudenell. You know, that seems to be, you know, your sort of current base, if you like, really, or home. You know, where you put most of your stuff on. I mean, do you still get the same excitement that you always had? I mean, I wouldn't imagine you'd do it if you did.
Yeah, but what I really like is putting bands that I've known from the past on. You know, it's like a lot of people you've seen that I put on regularly every year. You know, Kirk Brandon, John Otway, Mike Peters, Ian McNabb, all these people, and it's just really nice to meet up with your friends in the business. A year or so, you know, and I like that aspect of it. It's like a family, you know. The music scene in Britain isn't that big, you know. The promoters and most of the promoters know each other, and you know who's doing what, and it's like a family. I enjoy doing the Brudenell because it's really well run now. You know, Nathan does a really good job with it. I'm not going to beat up too much because we're on his film, and but yeah, it does a very good job of running the place. They've got an extra new room as well now. You've probably seen that, and yeah, it's just a very easy venue to do. Once it's like pushing a rock, you know, you know, pushing a rock. Once you get the impetus going, you know, then everything kind of fits into place. The rock runs smoothly. You get a bit of movement. And now, because of this COVID thing, we've got to start the rock off again. You know, which is a lot harder to get going.
Yeah.
I picked a bad analogy, but you know what I mean.
It's
you know, to get things rolling again, it's really hard.
Well, you've always managed it, John, over the decades that you've been doing it in Leeds music, and I'm sure that the rock will start to roll again. We're just over an hour. We've had another fantastic chat, which could have gone on for another several hours as usual. But I hope we've covered a lot of fantastic stuff. The names just keep coming, really, and the stories will keep coming. I hope everyone's enjoyed this. Who knows? We might do it again. John, it's been a great pleasure again. Thank you ever so much.
Just saying about the bands that I like to see them every year. There's also a lot of my customers have been coming for 40 years who I know really well. And I enjoy that too. I enjoy that whole thing. You know, that's why I like to be on the door. I like to see who's coming in. You know, some people I like, some people a bit wary of, but you know, most of the time, if they're enjoying it, I'm enjoying it, and that's the whole purpose.
That's a great motto for life. That brilliant stuff. All right, John Keenan, it's been a pleasure again. Thank you ever so much. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.